our strength, and our Redeemer. Amen. One Sunday night, a father was putting his 3-year-old daughter to bed. They read their story, sang their song, prayed their prayer, and then, just as he was about to kiss her goodnight, she asked, "Daddy, did God create the world?" Her father, wanting to offer an age-appropriate response that both affirmed God's role in creation, but also took into account the Big Bang, human evolution, and at least the basics of quantum theory, paused before he offered his response. "Yes, honey." But before he could go any further, she asked, "Where did God stand?" Where did God stand? Sometimes to see the world in a new way, we have to stand in a new place. To look from a new direction, to change our perspective. Children, of course, do this naturally. They have a kind of innate curiosity, an organic wonder at the world that allows them to keep seeing new possibilities, to keep looking from new directions, whether that means crawling under a table, standing on the furniture, or climbing a tree. And it seems to pay off. They often see new insights in the world in ways that we just never do. Somehow, that willingness to never allow yourself to be stuck in one place, to think only in one way, to see only from one perspective, allows for a new, a better view. A view that sees not just the world as it is, but as it could be. A world that sees the possibilities, a world that never lacks for wonders. A view that unfortunately fades as we age. Not that the wonders don't still exist. It's just that we struggle to see them. As Chesterton said, the world does not lack for wonders, merely for a sense of wonder. There comes a moment when we stop crawling under tables unless we've dropped something. When we don't stand on furniture unless we see a mouse. And we almost never climb a tree. Sure, there are exceptions, but they are rare. No, more likely what happens is that as we age, we start to train that wonder out of each other. We try and let go, to separate out that curiosity and replace it with a kind of cynical complacency, a hermeneutic of suspicion, not wonder at the world. And the challenge, as we know, is that the longer we stay in that place, the more rooted we become. Once we've made our choice about where we're standing, about what view we're going to take, once we've planted our flag, picked our cable news station, and chosen our tribe, it can be almost impossible to change. At that point, unless something comes along that forces us to change, unless someone builds a stage in the familiar place that we love, it takes work to change. The good news is that it's worth it. Because every once in a while, friends, changing our perspective can change our life. Sometimes we have to stand in a new place to see the world in a new way, to look from a new direction, to change our perspective. If we can think back that far, some of us will know the story for today from that children's song. Zacchaeus was a wee little man, and a wee little man was he. He climbed up in a sycamore tree, for the Lord he wanted to see. Glad that some people know it. And the song is great, but the story is even better. And the beauty of a story, the reason we tell these stories, the reason we open this book week after week and share a piece of the story is that it offers us a new place to stand. Just for a moment, it offers us a new place to stand, to maybe, just maybe, see the world in a new way. So how about we stand in the story for a moment and see what we can see? The story begins, simply enough, with a man named Zacchaeus, a chief tax collector, that is, a Roman bureaucrat, who wanted to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd could not because he was short in stature. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd he could not because he was short in stature. Now, in the Greek, as in the English, there's a little bit of subject-object confusion, which normally isn't such a big deal, except here it does raise a fairly significant question, which is, of course, who was short in stature? Listen again. He wanted to see Jesus, but could not on account of the crowd because he was short in stature. We've always thought Zacchaeus was the wee little man, but what if it was Jesus? Now, most of us have never given much thought to the height of Jesus, but if we're honest, we probably think of him as sort of average height, if not tall. That's how we like our leaders. The world was not built for short people. But what if Jesus was short? Talk about a change in perspective. What if the King of Kings, the Messiah, the Lord of Lords, the Prince of Peace was short? Does that change anything for us? Just another perspective. Of course, even then, he wouldn't be the shortest person in the Bible. That title falls to either Nehemiah or Bildad the Shuhite. We digress. Regardless of whether Zacchaeus or Jesus was the wee little man, it was a story of not being able to see someone that he longed to see, and deciding, even as a grown man, to embrace his childish ways and climb a tree, to step out over the crowd to be able to spot Jesus. And it worked out for him. Jesus, we're told, was passing through. He was there in Jericho on his way between Galilee and Jerusalem, and he was passing through, and when he gets to the tree where Zacchaeus is, he stops, he looks up, and then invites himself to dinner, like you do. Zacchaeus comes down and accommodates him, and the crowd who has been watching this man whom they call only sinner, this tax collector, this person they had already decided to dismiss on the basis of his title alone, and begin to grumble, 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 grumble. See, they didn't like the idea that Jesus would be meeting with a sinner, with this tax collector. They didn't understand what he would be, and their righteous indignation began to grumble, like seeing Ellen sit at a baseball game with W. People get angry. Zacchaeus, of course, defends himself. He says, I give half of my possessions to the poor. If I've defrauded anyone, I pay them back fourfold. What else can I do? To which Jesus basically responds, today, salvation has come to this house, for he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek out and save the lost. It's a beautiful little story. And we could go from here in any number of directions. We could choose to stand in any number of places, and maybe we could see it in a new way. As Atticus said to scouts, you can't really understand a man until you've crawled into his shoes and looked around, walked around a little. Maybe we could be so bold as to stand in the shoes of Jesus. Not forever, just for a moment. Maybe we could just stand there for a moment, see if in that perspective we might gain anything for this story. Jesus, of course, had a task in mind. He had a place he was heading. He was trying to get from Galilee to Jerusalem. And yet, when he encountered someone in need, he paused to help. He had his nose to the grindstone, head down in the task, and then decided, for whatever reason, to look up. And in so doing, changed someone's life. Maybe those of us who are so busy trying to get from point A to point B, so busy trying to get to where we're going, so busy looking down, could afford a reminder about what happens when we look up. Of course, maybe we want to climb a tree today. Maybe just for a moment we should stand with Zacchaeus, just see what it's like to ourselves go out on a limb, to take a little risk, to see what it's like above the crowd. Certainly we get something of what's going on in Zacchaeus' life. After all, who among us doesn't know what it's like to be judged on the basis of how we look? Or something we've done? The title we have? And not on who we actually are. We know how lonely that can be. How isolating. We may even know what it's like to have done something wrong. To have taken a right when we should have turned left. To have made some mistakes in life that no matter how hard we try, we can't seem to live down. Maybe climbing a tree could offer us some perspective. Maybe we could just get above the din, get our heads above the crowd for long enough to see someone who's willing to look at us. Not us, but us. And see not just an object, but a person. A child of Abraham. A child of God. Someone worthy of life. Then again, maybe we prefer to just stick with the crowd this morning. That, of course, is a fairly familiar place to find ourselves with that crowd. We do recognize that crowd, if we're honest, those who are quick to judge, who have made up their minds, who are not going to change even if Jesus himself asks them to. We know what that's like, don't we? We recognize it from our families, from our politics, from our churches. We are so quick to try and take people and put them into a nice, neat little box, to wrap a string around it, and once we've decided, Republican, Democrat, gay, straight, friend, foe, us, them, not even an act of God can change. And the insidious thing about when that happens, friends, as we know, is that it is so comfortable. It is so easy to find ourselves going along with the crowd once we've planted our flag, picked our news station, once we've made that decision about how we're going to look at the world. It is so easy to grow complacent, to grow comfortable, and it doesn't take long, rooted in one place, before we start to grow those roots even deeper. And the weeds begin to grow around us, making it hard to really see the world. Like Plato's cave, we can kind of see the shadows, but they don't reveal the whole truth. And frankly, even when we push them aside long enough to catch a glimpse of something, we don't want to see it. We would rather not, even when we notice just how much damage it's doing. Even when we notice how wide that chasm continues to grow. Even when we can smell and feel and hear the dysfunction around us. Even when we know we want to change, we don't want to. When was the last time we changed our minds? Was there a last time? Maybe that's because we have it all figured out. Maybe we're the ones who have finally gotten it right. We've figured it out, and if everyone would just step in line, the world would be a better place. Maybe that's where we are. If so, then that's where we should stay. We should keep our flag planted. We should keep doing what we're doing. How is it working out? Be careful of being so sure that we're right, that we're willing to do wrong. Because, friends, if there's any doubt in our mind, even a sliver of doubt in our mind that we haven't gotten this all right, if there's some part of us that says maybe we haven't figured all of this out, then we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to each other, we owe it to this world to stop and change our perspective. Whatever it takes, crawl under that table, stand on that furniture, climb that tree. Whatever it takes to be able to look out at God's creation and see people not as objects, but as the subject of our love. The people we are called to interact with, one human being at a time. Each and every one of us is called to find a way to do that. To change our perspective until we're able to interact with all of God's creation and see children of the same God. Sometimes, to see the world in a new way, we have to stand in a new place. To look from a new direction. To change our perspective. We may never know where God stood at the first part of creation. But make no mistake, friends, we know where God stands now. On the side of justice, by the side of the outcast, with each and every person longing for life. God stands on the side of love. No, in the end, the question is not where does God stand? We know the answer to that. The question is, where do we? Amen.